Hi all. Today I will be discussing about the topic analyzing the population features. So, what is population features? There are three population features. They are growth, mortality and selection. In this class we will be analyzing these three population features such as growth, mortality and selection. When we analyzing these three population features, we are dealing with essential elements of population dynamics, and these three concepts are actually is a central to understanding how our population changes occur over time due to birth, death and natural or artificial pressures. So, coming to the first population feature, that is the population growth. You already know what is a population and what is population growth. Actually, what is a population growth? Population growth refers to the change in number of individuals in a population over time. And this population growth can be affected by many factors such as birth rates, immigration, emigration, and also death rates. There are two types of population growth we can see. They are exponential growth and logistic growth. What is an exponential growth? Actually, exponential growth is a type of growth which occurs when the resources are abundant and the population grows rapidly without any constraints. Coming to the second type of population growth, that is the logistic growth, it is a more realistic model where population growth slows as it approaches the carrying capacity. So, what is a carrying capacity? Actually, carrying capacity is the limit of population size which is based on resource availability. That is known as carrying capacity. So, this carrying capacity is related to the logistic growth. Logistic growth is a realistic model where population growth slows as it approaches the carrying capacity. In this diagram, you can see two different graphs. This first graph shows the exponential graph of a population growth, and second one shows the logistic growth. The shape of two graphs are different. You can see from this diagram. That is the difference between exponential growth and logistic growth. Okay. Next, we will go to the second population features, that is the mortality. Mortality refers to the death rate in a population. It can also be influenced by many factors such as age, disease, predation and environmental conditions. And we can calculate the mortality of a given population by calculating the mortality rate. So, how can we calculate this mortality rate? Mortality rate is a percentage of population that dies per unit time. There is also two types of mortality. They are natural mortality and anthropogenic mortality. First, coming to the natural mortality, from the name itself you can understand what is a natural mortality. Actually, natural mortality it is deaths due to natural causes like age, disease and many environmental hazards. Coming to the second type of mortality, that is the anthropogenic mortality, it is the deaths. It occurs due to human activities like hunting, habitat destruction and pollution. So, mortality refers to what? Death rate in a population. And there are two types of mortality, that is the natural mortality and anthropogenic mortality. Natural mortality is the death occurs due to natural causes like age, disease and environmental hazards. Anthropogenic mortalities are the deaths due to human activities like hunting, habitat loss or destruction and population. See, this diagram shows the mortality rate per 1 lakh people in USA calculated in 2020-21. In this, we can analyze the mortality rate in many countries. There is a curve related to mortality. It is called survivorship curves. Actually, survivorship curves are survival of death at different stages can be explained by a curve called survivorship curves. This survivorship curves shows the likelihood of survival at different ages. Actually, humans and other living organisms are dying in different ages, and these ages can be plotted in a graph like survivorship curves. And there are three types of survivorship curves. They are type 1, type 2 and type 3. In type 1, it explains high survival until old age like humans. Actually, humans will die on by ഒരു 60 to 70 ages. That is, early death is very rare in case of humans. High survival can be seen in humans until the old age. In type 2, it is a constant death rate throughout the life. Examples: birds. In type 3, high mortality at early life stages. That is the fishes. So these are the three types of survivorship curves. Next, coming to the last population features, that is the third population feature, that is the selection. You know what is a selection? Selection is a process by which certain traits or characters become more common in a population due to advantages in survival and reproduction. By this selection only, some of the organisms are existing in a population and some of them are dying in a population. And there are two types of selection. They are natural selection and artificial selection. And also there is one more selection, that is a sexual selection. Here you can see that in this flow chart, selection is of three types: natural, artificial and sexual selections. And natural selection are three types. What are they? Stabilizing selection, directional selection and disruptive selection. Now we are going to discuss these three types of selection in detail. Coming to the natural selection. What is natural selection? Actually, natural selections are the traits or characters that provide a survival or reproductive advantage become more common over generation. In that flowchart, we saw that there are three types of natural selection. They are stabilizing selection, directional selection and disruptive selection. Stabilizing selection actually favors intermediate traits, reducing variation. In directional selection, it favors one extreme of a trait and shifting the population traits in that direction. That is, in one direction only the population will shift us. But this disruptive selection will favors extreme of both ends, leading to more variation. So comparing these three, which causes less variation is stabilizing selection. And directional selection also variation will be very less, but will be higher comparing to the stabilizing selection and less comparing to disruptive selection. This directional selection favors one extreme of a trait. So the shifting of population will occur in only one direction. So variation will be less. But this disruptive selection favors extreme of both ends and it will lead to more variation. Next, coming to the second type of selection, that is the artificial selection. Actually, artificial selection is humans will select for desired traits in an organism. For example, we can say that for agriculture and for other animal breeding, we will be selecting the breeds which we need. So that is actually artificial selection, that we will select the desired trait for our uses. So next, coming to the sexual selection. Sexual selection is based on the traits that improve mating success. We already discussed that there is three types of natural selection, and in this diagram you can see the different graphs of these three natural selection. That is, first one is the directional selection, second one is the stabilizing and third is the disruptive. In this descriptive, you can see more variations and very less in this stabilizing selection. Next, we are going to discuss the interaction between the three population features, that is the growth, mortality and selection. First, coming to the interaction between growth and mortality. Actually, how this growth and mortality depends on each other. The balance between birth rates and mortality rates determines whether a population is increasing, stabilizing or declining. Actually, there should be a balance between the birth rate and a mortality rate. If mortality rate is very higher than the birth rate, then we can say that the population is actually declining. And if the birth rate is very more than this mortality rate, we can say that population is increasing. And if there is a moderate balance between this birth rate and mortality rate, then we can say that the population is in a stable condition. When coming to the relationship between mortality and selection, we can say that high mortality in specific environments can drive natural selection by favoring individuals with traits that enhance survival. And coming to the relationship between growth and selection, we can say that selection can affect population growth rates by favoring individuals that reproduce more successfully under certain conditions. So now you understood the interaction between these three population features, right? Next, we are going to discuss some of the practical applications of population features. What are the practical applications of these population features? One is conservation biology, next one is epidemiology, and third one is the agriculture. What are all the practical applications? Conservation biology, epidemiology and agriculture. That is, these three populations such as growth, mortality and selection can be used in conservating our biodiversity and in epidemiology and agriculture. How we can conserve biology means, while understanding about these three population dynamics, it will help us to manage the endangered species and their habitats in a population. And how this is helping in the epidemiology is, the mortality and population growth models are used in tracking the spread and impact of diseases. In agriculture also, these population features are applicable. Like how means, artificial selection is used to enhance desirable traits like yield and disease resistance in crop. I hope you understood the population features and its types and how they interact in a populations. Thank you.